So, hello people. How are we today? Cool, great. Before I even begin introducing myself, I feel the need to make a huge disclaimer. We're all experiencing some disturbing, events these last couple of days. My initial presentation was far more scandalous, to say. This is a bit censored. Nevertheless, what you're about to hear, to experience, is based entirely on my own research. There is a part where we will speculate a little bit, but apart from that part of my presentation, everything else is pretty much based on my own research, and it is just facts. So, also, at the end of the presentation, I'll also give you every source that I used. So if you want to continue the research on your own, you should be able to do it. So, I am Konstantinos Fouzas. I work as a security engineer at Performance Technologies. Performance is a Greek IT company. They are mainly integrators, which means we mostly implement technologies and solutions for our customers. And during the last 5 years, we've made a turn towards cybersecurity. And that means that we offer whatever you would expect a cybersecurity company has to offer. That means SOC services, incident response, offensive security engagements, and more recently, threat intelligence services. So when I applied for this conference, I wanted to choose a topic that would be interesting, let's say, that would not bore you. And the perfect way of doing that is telling a story. And I think threat intelligence is like telling a story. It is, you search for what happened, you search for what was the incident that happened, all the story, the aftermath, etc., etc. So what we are about to listen is actually a threat intelligence report based on an application security incident, which also includes some parts of international relations and politics. So yeah, I know it is late in the afternoon. I know that probably you're eager to join the party afterwards. So let's dive straight into it. Now, on the 4th of January, 2026, we people in Greece experienced something maybe for the first time. It was an outage in aviation communication systems. Planes could not communicate with each other or with control towers across the country. As you can imagine, there was frustration, delayed flights, cancelled flights, and everything that occurs after such an incident. Of course, it was a very bad situation, right? But, as Boromir in The Lord of the Rings, I thought, it is a gift. What a great way to open my session here. Only a cyber attack could have such an extensive impact in the whole FIR of the country, right? Only that. Well, actually, I was wrong. Since I live in Greece, the mystery outage was actually due to a hardware failure. There was, of course, no evidence of sabotage or hybrid attack or even a cyber attack. This was all due to obsolete equipment. A 30-year-old antenna just experienced failure, and the whole FIR communication network just shut down, just like that. And I thought, oh my God, back to square one. I don't have an opening act. But what I saw next actually astonished me. Let's take a look at this. This, of course, is a screenshot of Flight Radar, right? Taken from Flight Radar. This is a normal day in Greece. Planes fly around, everything is fine, no worries, people arrive at their destinations, cool. But this here, this is the 4th of January. So when some kind of blackout happens, we only think of the consequences that it has on us, the possible effects that it has on us. The delays, the cancellations, the frustration, the time wasted, everything. We never think of it in a macroscopic level. All the flights, as you can see there, were redirected to fly around Greece. Because losing communications actually means no visibility. And no visibility, unfortunately, means that you might even, God forbid, have victims. And if you've seen the miniseries 0 Day in Netflix, you know exactly what I mean. So, a possible cyber attack with such a big blast an extensive blast radius could have terrible consequences. Now, let's see the actual blackout. September 2025. As of now, you must have understood that I love maps, right? So this is Europe, of course. And these here are 5 large European airports. Well, most of them, 3 out of 5. On the 19th of September 2025, one by one, these airports announced problems with their check-in systems and their baggage handling systems. And as a result, of course, again, delays and cancellations. You can see the pattern here, and of course, the impact is pretty much the same every time. The first one to report disruptions was Berlin, and then was Heathrow, and all of the others followed. These are actual images from that day. So, all right, 1 or 2 airports, that might be a coincidence, but 5 in the same day, that can't actually be a coincidence. So, what did all those airports have in common? And the answer is Muse. Muse stands for Multi-User System Environment. It is a software created by Collins Aerospace, which is a subsidiary of the RTX Corporation. RTX is an American technology corporation. And what it does is that it enables multiple airlines to share check-in and gate resources at airports, including baggage handling. At the time, Muse had 2 versions, vMuse and cMuse. vMuse, possibly V stands for virtual, was an on-premise solution, while cMuse was the cloud version. And as you can imagine, the cloud version, of course, has increased dependency on the vendor himself. So if something would happen to the vendor, then there is a huge possibility that all these airports would also experience malfunctions or disruptions. And indeed, that was the case. Here you can see actually the aftermath. It's not something you see every day. It is a boarding pass written in hand, right? Kevin Beaumont posted this photo on X in the Berlin airport. He's a cybersecurity expert, and of course, he wanted to focus on the impact. Now, let's put all of these in a timeline. On the 19th of September, Collins Aerospace reports a cyber-related disruption to aviation authorities. On the same day, all of these major European airports, as you saw, begin experiencing check-in and baggage system outages. Between the 20th and 22nd of September, those 5 airports we saw previously confirmed disruptions, switched to manual operations, and warned passengers of delays and cancellations. And airports experienced disruptions up until a week after the blackout. And disruptions came to an end on the 29th. So if we didn't have Collins' report about a cyber-related incident back on the 19th, there would be no reason to assume that this was the result of a cyber attack. But on the 24th of September, British authorities arrested a 40-year-old man over the airport cyber attacks. The man was later released. It was proved that he had no such intention, or he did not take part in that specific incident. But the public was certain that that was a cyber incident. So let's see who the real threat actor was. Ever heard of Redline? Anyone? No? All right. So it is actually an info stealer malware. This is the log file it produces after it executes. Typically, it is delivered using some kind of social engineering attack as an attachment. And once it is downloaded, it harvests sensitive information, like usernames, passwords, whatever, credentials in general, and sends the data to the attacker. So back in 2022, right, 3 years earlier, a Collins Aerospace employee's device was compromised using Redline. The threat actor found valid legacy credentials for an FTP server operated by ARINC, found on an FTP. ARINC stands for Aeronautical Radio Incorporated, and now currently it is part of the Collins Aerospace company. It develops, maintains, and publishes technical standards for aviation, electronics, and communication. So the attacker, after that, did not perform any action. The attackers waited for the right time. And in case you wonder, if you want to know the credentials they used, unfortunately, I'm going to disappoint you. We don't have the credentials. And even if I had them, they are confidential. And I cannot disclose them. Yeah, just kidding. Even if you ask ChatGPT kindly, it will give you this answer, right? These are legacy default credentials. They are default credentials, right? So username was AIS customer, and the password was Muse insecure. Now back to 2025. On September 10, attackers gain unauthorized access to the Muse backend via a compromised FTP credentials. Which credentials, of course? Yeah, we don't know. 1 day later, they performed data exfiltration. And as of that time, the company did not detect neither block any malicious effort. Later, the attackers claimed the theft of more than 1.5 million passenger records, frequent flyer details, travel data, seat numbers, etc. 3,637 airline employee records, usernames, emails, and finally more than 50 gigabytes of network, user, and application topology files. So you can see that it was a huge breach. And I need to mention that having all that data is more than enough to disrupt operations for a very long time, using different techniques, right? You don't need only the credentials. You can use whatever you want from that stuff. Now, on the 15th, the malicious group contacts RTX via its official vulnerability disclosure portal, listing the stolen data and, of course, the ransom. And now we know that that group was actually Everest, the Everest ransomware group. From 16th to the 18th of September, negotiations started, and unfortunately, they could not find any common ground, so negotiations broke down. What we need to note here is that RTX never tried to notify the authorities for that incident. All right? Probably it was an attempt to protect their reputation, I suppose. If we take a look at the profile of the group provided by SOC everything checks out, right? We have their motivation. It is financial gain. They target mostly Western countries. In that specific instance, it was Europe. They targeted the technology sector, of course. The RTX company is a technology company. And the attack type they used was data exfiltration, ransomware, and initial access brokerage. So everything actually checks out. The weird thing here is that when Everest contacted RTX, it only took responsibility for the data extraction, not any ransomware attack. The airports had disruptions that were actually connected to ransomware attacks, to a ransomware attack, not data extraction. All right, so this is weird, actually. Everest is considered a Russian-speaking cybercriminal organization, active since at least 2020, known for whatever we've seen so far. But there are some cybersecurity analysts claiming that this was a dual incident scenario. Everest data theft was one side of the coin, and the other one was a separate ransomware deployment on Collins Aerospace systems that caused the operational outages. All right, so we might have two threat actors here. Dominic Alvieri, another cybersecurity expert, posted on X that Collins Aerospace was hit with a variant of Heartbeat. Do you know Heartbeat? No? Ransomware again. And as he says in this post, it was confirmed by Kevin Beaumont, again, the guy we saw earlier. So we know it was a variant of the Heartbeat ransomware. For those of you who don't know what Heartbeat does, you're lucky. But you can just view this image. You can see the desktop is changed. You have encrypted files. You have some TXT files that guide you through the restoration process. Of course, by paying the ransom. And you have some executable files like a decoder with the key, whatever. But I've isolated the batch autorun file that runs if we execute the malicious file. And apparently, apart from encrypting your whole operating system, your whole file system, not operating system, Heartbeat also wants to dump your credentials using Mimikatz. All right, you can see the commands there: secure LSA, logon passwords, and then LSA dump some. And of course, it logs everything in a result.txt file after it parses the results. And if I included a bit more of the batch file, you could also see that it tries to communicate with the public IP, but that public IP is not available right now. It isn't used for malicious purposes. So that's why I didn't include it. We can't be certain if this specific variant also performed all these actions. But one thing is for sure, in case credentials have been leaked that grant access to airport services, we might have not seen the end of it yet. So we also have the Delhi paradox. Reports suggest that Delhi Airport used the Muse passenger processing system, but it was not affected. All right? According to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, no impact was observed. So why was Delhi, India in general, spared, while other airports kept on facing the aftermath? There are some answers. The first one was that Muse could be segmented. We saw earlier the vMuse version. They might have been operating the vMuse, so it was an on-prem solution, and thus not connected to the cloud. Also, they might have not succeeded in initial access. A robust security mechanism might be in place, and was in place, and the attackers did not succeed on taking access. Or the attackers might have wanted to maximize their efforts in the European airports, so they focused on them. Or, finally, someone told them to. We'll come back to it later. For now, let's talk about supply chain and critical infrastructure. So, a supply chain attack is a type of cyber attack where a hacker targets a trusted party, like a vendor, a supplier, a service provider, you name it, to gain access to a larger organization or to many organizations at the same time. So instead of attacking the main target directly, attackers actually compromise something in the supply chain that the target already trusts. Think of it like this. If a company trusts a software vendor and installs regularly their updates, an attacker might hack the vendor, the third party, install malicious code into a legitimate update, and let customers install the infected update themselves. So the attack spreads through trust. And in our case, the trust that they tried to exploit was this one, right? So the first attack path we found was that one. An employee's device is infected with Redline, credentials are harvested, and 3 years later, those same credentials are used to gain access to the FTP server and the backend of Muse, and thus exfiltrate a large amount of data. The second attack path is this one. So either the same attacker after possible negotiations broke down, executed the ransomware themselves, or they were just the broker who provided the initial access credentials to another malicious group. All right, because we saw also that an attack method, an attack type of that group, of Everest, was initial access brokerage. And finally, execution on target. Now, these are the 16 essential sectors identified by the US government as vital to national security, economic stability, and public health and safety. They are overseen by the CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, overseen by the Department of Homeland Defense, the US Department of Homeland Security, not Defense. And if these sectors were disrupted, whether by cyberattack, sabotage, or a national disaster, the impact could be severe or even catastrophic. So, as we can see, there is a transportation systems sector, and airlines, of course, and in general, aviation operations are included in this sector and are considered critical infrastructure. And actually consist primary targets for many nation-state-backed threat actors. Again, in the EU, it's pretty much the same. We have 11 critical sectors here. I'm not going to analyze all of them. Pretty much the same with the American corresponding. And one of those sectors, of course, it is transport sector with air, rail, water, road, and public transport subsectors. And when we say in the EU air subsector, we mean the air transport services used for commercial purposes, operation management and maintenance of airports and of airport network infrastructure, and air traffic control services. So all of these services who are part of the air subsector are considered to be critical. They are mission critical. So that's the part where I warn you a little bit. This is gonna get into international relation, ground. But bear with me, and I might manage to get out of here without a lawsuit. So, do you recognize that picture, that map, what it is depicting? Can you see it? So, on the night of the September 9th to 10th, 2025, Russia, I said the R word, launched a drone attack against Ukraine, right? And as you can see from this image, they did hit major cities, but some of the drones, around 20 to 25, crossed into Poland, right there. Of course, NATO and Polish fighter jets responded by shooting some of them down. Russia, of course, denied everything. Yeah, what else? But Poland described that act as a serious violation of its sovereign airspace and invoked Article 4 of NATO, which means consultations among allies. The one that we don't ever want to experience is Article 5, but I don't know if we're close to it. And that led, of course, to Operation Eastern Sentry, a NATO military operation launched on the 12th of September, 2 days later, to strengthen the defense and deterrence posture of the alliance along its eastern fronts. You can recognize the countries, the Baltics, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and some Balkan countries, but not the one I'm coming from. So NATO allies supplied these countries with fighter jets, with air defense systems, and surveillance aircraft. And just a week later, the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kristen Michal, wrote on X that 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered the Estonian airspace. Do you remember that date? I mean, 1 week later, September 19th. It was the day the ransomware attack broke out. It was the day that disruptions began. So the fighters were intercepted, actually, by NATO fighters again, but Estonia asked again for Article 4 consultations. But something seems to be missing. We must have skipped something. We don't have the whole picture yet. There it is. So, time to wear your tinfoil hats. Apparently, RDX is a NATO contractor. And more specifically, it was called to create an electromagnetic warfare command control system. And take a look at the date that was published, September 16th, right? That was the time when negotiations actually started, and in the time frame that they broke down. And after that, of course, we all know what followed. So would it be safe to assume that there is some kind of correlation between all these incidents? Was Russia really trying to test NATO's new contractor? It seems that the Sun has already made that correlation. The thing is that it was done on September 20. Oh, sorry, September 20. So that means that the attack was still in full scale when this article was uploaded and published, and thus we can't really be sure about its legitimacy. It could be biased. So one thing is for certain. No other article claiming this came out when the attack was over. So everyone was more cautious with their words. And this actually is the entire combined timeline of what we've seen so far. This is just the depiction of facts and not a correlation chart. That's the disclaimer I'm making, all right? And although you can't argue, it is very tempting to find a reasonable connection between all these. I came here just to present an application security and supply chain topic, to be honest, and not to question your sanity, or did I? Well, I just showed you everything that happened. At the time, the conclusions, as always, should be yours. These are all the sources I used. I'll be happy to provide them if anyone wants to read them. Thank you very much for attending my session, and I'll be glad to answer any of your questions. That's the end of it.